You're listening to Convenience Matters, brought to you by Nax. We'll talk about what we see at stores and what the future may hold for our industry.
We're coming up on the most watched TV event of the year. It, of course, is a sporting event. It's traditionally been a great forum for brands to tell people about their products and their latest offers. But more recently, it's also been used to elevate important societal issues, chief among them the fight against human trafficking, which is going to be our conversation today. So, want to set the stage before we get into our discussion today. When Nax looked at a lot of different areas that we can play a role in as an industry, one thing that came out was we are in every community in the country. We do 160 million transactions a day, so roughly half of the U.S. population is in a store every day. And we're known for extended hours of operation, oftentimes 24-hour operations. So how does that fit into people getting help when they most need it? And at the forefront of that discussion is the ability to address some of the issues related to human trafficking. That's what we'd like to talk about today. And joining us is Cheryl Csiky. She is Executive Director of In Our Backyard, which also many of you may know as the offshoot of the group, Convenience Stores Against Trafficking. So thank you for joining us today, Cheryl.
Yeah, Jeff, thank you. Glad to be here.
So your organization has worked with Nax, worked with close to 20 different state associations within the convenience space. Your signature program is Convenience Stores Against Trafficking. Can you first, before we dive into what your group does, can you just kind of let people know what is human trafficking and why convenience stores can play such a central role in addressing this problem?
Yeah, I think, as you and I sit here and maybe discuss with friends and family or at the workplace, what is human trafficking? It breaks down to there's sex trafficking and forced labor, right? Or labor trafficking. And there has to be some sort of coercion or fraud or forced violence, right? Something that's compelling somebody to really give all control of their profit or funds over to someone else's control. That might include where they live. It may include, threats of violence to their family. But whatever it is, it's slavery in a sense, right? Like you have no control of yourself. There's no human dignity left to be involved. So, worldwide, we're looking at about, I think stats now are saying about 50 million, and that includes forced marriage for people who are being trafficked around the world. So it is an issue, but when you talk about it in that sense, it sounds kind of far away. And I think that's why, our conversation today is to kind of pull it in, to get away from the bird's eye view and really talk about when we see it, think about where can you not go? Like, I think the pandemic was a great example of where did you have to go? If you were pretty much shelter in place, there's a few places left where you probably had to visit. And I think that really showed up at, gas station for fuel, convenience stores, and it really helped us tell that story. When we think about predators, traffickers, someone who is maybe committing a crime and not necessarily taking victims over a state border, but just in the control factor of having them work. Maybe it's a different agricultural area. Maybe it's selling their bodies at different hotels. But at some point, they're usually in transportation with the victim, right? They're not always locked down in cages. There are abductions that happen. It's way less than 10%, but most of them are kind of right in front of us. And really understanding that a convenience store or gas station is somewhere that's a public place, and they might be right in front of you. It could be a grocery store, but the size of the space matters too. So us learning about partnership in the community, we started to really look at convenience stores and say, I think we have something here. And I think Nax was a part of that too.
Yeah, we played a big part in it. And I want to address at least one myth that you brought up. You watch movies, and of course, those in the convenience store space, we always see how our industry is misinterpreted in TV or movies. But same with human trafficking. It's like, it's a great plot device to have a white panel van pull up, drag somebody away, and then the rest of the movie is spent trying to get them back. With human trafficking, sure, it happens, but what it most often happens is the person, and there's a trust that is built up, and you don't even really feel it happening until it's too late. And in the second myth attached to that, and have you talk about both of them, is that it only happens to those people. People that, my kids are good kids, they'd never be involved in that. Well, if you have a cell phone, if you're dealing with people who are anonymous, if you're dealing with somebody who's a teen or a pre-teen and doesn't have as much competence, which is basically a description of every teen and preteen, there's a vulnerability attached to that. So it is a problem that happens everywhere. And it is something that happens so subtly that it's not like a defining point where you say, okay, by then it's too late.
Yeah, and I think it's that big world view of it can be a huge connected ring, right, of trafficking of some kind that can happen. But it also can be just a trafficker sees vulnerability and sees profit, right? So there might be only one person being victimized involved, and it's a very small relational scale. It can be highly relational. Most survivors say they know their trafficker. It's someone they would trust. A lot of them have that relationship happening where it seems like a great romantic relationship, a safe partner, and it takes about a year and a half before that other side is dropped, and now they're houseless, and someone has to help make money, and they put that pressure on of it's just going to be one time or a temporary a struggle, right? Very temporary, but it's not. It's set up purposely that way. This isn't a one-time thing. This is someone being sold 10 times a day on average. And that goes for adults and children. It's the ruthlessness to make money, because as if, anyone can think of it as selling drugs. You sell it one time, the product's gone. But there's that realization of a human's body, and there's a person attached to that body. That's the difference, and the compassion side that we all feel. I would never see a human as a drug, right? But unfortunately, this is a crime, and traffickers see it that way. And all children, right, are vulnerable in a sense. I always say safe adults say no to kids. So they're already vulnerable, because anyone who's predatory is going to tell them yes, is going to listen, all the things that safe parents and safe adults. It's hard to manage children when they have the internet, when they have cell phones. But if you don't have some type of plan, an open communication plan with the internet or phones, that's perfect bait for a trafficker, because they'll get that child a phone. They'll get them the things they need to communicate with them only. And that's like complete isolation. So we kind of say there's vulnerabilities of all kinds. It's not just one. It's not just missing children. There is a high level of Black women and children, and it's a women's violence issue, right? Doesn't mean boys aren't trafficked. But the reporting is getting better, and that's why we're here for awareness, I think, is to try to say, hey, there's a hotline, there's resources, and our job is to create the awareness of that human trafficking looks many different ways between labor trafficking and sex trafficking, and it's something we can talk about. We don't have to shy away from it. It's not contagious. It's not something that's too grimy to get into. You can find ways in the community to spot it and report it.
We do a lot of consumer surveys, and we did one a couple of years ago where we asked prospective employees, community leaders, and other just people, just average people. Here's 20 messages that relate to the convenience store industry. Some of them are positive, some of them are negative. They're written deliberately so. The number one message that tested best was convenience stores can play a life-saving role in addressing the issue of human trafficking across the country. And I think we've seen over the last few years that you've had some great partners with Convenience Stores Against Trafficking. I had mentioned at the top of the show that we're talking about a big sporting event as a mouthpiece to talk about the issue. And in early February, you're going to be in Las Vegas. I will be in Las Vegas, and working with some partners, both in the industry and outside the industry, to raise awareness about the issue. Not that that day will solve it, but there are some things that are going to happen those days that are pretty amazing. But continuing the conversation about how can you play a role. Do you want to talk about the event in Las Vegas?
Oh, for sure. This is our 15th year. I can't believe we're saying that, but this is our 15th year for efforts surrounding the major events such as Super Bowl. It's an opportunity to reach people. Tens of thousands will travel that week to come to the complete environment of a festival event to celebrate major events like this. A major event is like everyone knows about it. So it's just on that docket. There's lots of entertainment happening. People are there to spend money. And all of a sudden they turn their head and I'm learning about human trafficking. It's a unique dynamic. But it is something that we use as a piece to say, do you know how to report human trafficking? Do you know we can really make this world change and save a life? And the convenience stores are kind of our vessel, like our pathway, right? When we think about human trafficking in a city, there's that urban side to it, and it happens in the rural areas also. So what I love most is an event where about the entire week before, we invite the public. You can go to our website, inourBackyard.org, and check it out if you're in Vegas on February 3rd. It's a Saturday morning at 9 a.m. But Jeff and I will be there with some local organizations. And, we do a training to help people understand what to look for. But then we use them to really mobilize. So we have, about 100 or so people show up, and they'll identify missing children in the area. And we put them in books, little booklets, and we have those volunteers go out to the local gas stations and convenience stores and check in with the cashiers. The convenience store will usually take, a stack of the booklets, pass them out to the community. And there's about 36 children listed in that booklet, and they're at high risk, right? They're vulnerable. They have a need, whatever's going on in their life, online or even in person, traffickers are going to target these types of children, right? The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, estimates about 1 of every 6 are probably already being sexually exploited or trafficked. So when we think about what children are targeted in the United States, we're just trying to say, well, if you think about missing children, that's a higher indicator. It's not the only way, but it's one of the indicators that we can talk about and kind of rally around. And my experience was, does this work? I showed up, to this event 8 years ago and wondered, can this work? And the first convenience store I went on my visit, they identified a child instantly. It was this lady behind the register, and she said, "Oh, I see her. She comes in." I couldn't believe it. And that was that handoff of, I'm passionate about this. I hate human trafficking. It fuels my soul, but I can't run around the community like a guard dog like I want to. I can watch my own kids and their circles, but that convenience store team member is there late hours. They see people in and out. I've never sat at a convenience store for more than 25 minutes, to be honest. So really understanding that connection for me was, it's a safe outreach. Our families that join us that day, it's a way for them to kind of learn, hear, even hear from that cashier a little bit about what she sees. You guys have this like inside view of what the community looks like, and it makes a difference. So for the week after that event, we gather different agencies, law enforcement, survivor leaders. We do a bunch of information gathering, set up investigation cases as best as we can, to send forward to local law enforcement to take action. And those include those tips that we get from that outreach. And partnering with NCMEC, 16 of the missing children were recovered, were located by the end of our outreach within a week. So we know when we gather together, we engage the public, we engage community stores, that there is a higher rate of recoveries to happen. And it's building that case of education. We need better education for the public to understand what human trafficking actually looks like, and kind of gets away from that white van, story that we all keep hearing in our head. That's just taking away children randomly. It does happen. I don't want to take away from the sensitivity of that topic, but what we're talking about is something you can see. It's relational and really has a much more higher majority of human trafficking in the United States.
Oh, a couple of years ago when the big event was in Miami, I had spoken at the event that happens the week before and wanted to find something timely. And just a few days earlier, I had read a story about a McDonald's clerk. And basically, they had been a partner with National Safe Place Network, which is another group that NACS works with. And there was a safe place sign on the McDonald's. And this person knew, because the big event, this happened in San Francisco, and this person knew, who was in San Francisco, there was the big event there 5 years earlier, remembered this outreach. And when the time was right for her, told the clerk at the drive-thru, I need help. And the person next to her was the trafficker, happened to be asleep briefly, and the team knew what to do. And just thinking about how impactful that is, that there's the ability to affect lives in a super positive way that week. And then there's the leave behind information that you're not alone, that there is help for you, that can last years until you need it. So it was a really, really powerful message to me, that outreach, that you don't know how many people you reach, because there's no ways to metric to provide a metric to that, but it's really impactful. And the other example was the year prior to that, in Atlanta, the Georgia Association Convenience Stores had made addressing human trafficking their top strategic initiative, and worked with In Our Backyard Convenience Stores Against Trafficking. And you guys, CNN did a piece, and they don't usually do pieces about local Atlanta because they're a national news organization, and they try to avoid that perception that they were an Atlanta news-based organization. But it was an amazing package that showed a news package, a 4-minute piece that showed the power of our industry and how, when we work on something together, we can have just an amazing impact, and it doesn't have to take much work.
Yeah, and we think about the Convenience Stores Against Trafficking currently reaches about 30,000, over 30,000 stores daily with that hotline posting, which is through our freedom stickers. So not only are we looking for the missing children during the week of the big game, but the volunteers are asking, can we place this freedom sticker that has the National Human Trafficking Hotline on it, in your restroom stall, where someone who might be a survivor is safe to maybe see something? Because as you mentioned, her abuser, trafficker, is asleep in the car and she has a moment to go talk. So, they are being watched and controlled a lot of the time. They still have a cell phone, but it's also controlled. I think that's a misconception of, they don't have access to everything. Sometimes they do. And that's obviously paid for by the trafficker. But when we look at the hotline statistics coming in each year, it's just under 100 calls a day that come in. But who's calling and making the reports? The top two are community businesses, and I say that's I try to brag about this industry. Like, it is convenience stores calling in. We have a lot of data that's not researched, but just like these conversations, we check in. About over 100 a year we see are happening because of convenience stores for recoveries. But it's the convenience stores that are calling the hotline, and right up there with them are survivors. And that's the difference of what makes this program awesome is, a survivor might not have the ability to call while they're on site, but they continue to see this hotline over and over again in a safer place, I would say, and they do utilize it. And then on the other side of the coin is some don't identify as a trafficking victim. I myself was one of them. I was exploited as a young child by a neighbor, and I knew I was being abused, but I didn't understand the money concept. I didn't understand a video of me could be used for further outings, while I'm being abused on a date in a car. I didn't understand what was happening to me. So, to look at me and say, honestly, with transparency, I, as a child in a store, might not recognize that hotline sticker will help me, right? But that's why we have trainings to help people see, whether it's a school or a convenience store, to help identify when to make the report. So the beauty is seeing the community knows how to report, because about 1/3 are recovered because of someone saw something and said something. But then that other side of it is for survivor empowerment in itself. And I think that's what partners really love. They're able to reach survivors also. Yes, we can train who's on our teams, but we also know putting that freedom sticker inside a restroom is going to reach a survivor. They do take it seriously. And, however they get to that hotline number, there's other messages across DHS is a great one, the Blue campaign. But to get that hotline in their hands, that's where we really can pull together with awareness, but also take action and make sure we're getting resources to reach survivors.
And as I had mentioned earlier, it doesn't have to be complicated. You make these freedom stickers available to stick in bathrooms. And I've talked to retailers who say, we know it's working because we'll have to replace the sticker because somebody has crossed out the number with something so you can't read it, either a pen or some sort of razor or something like that. That tells them it's working because people that don't want that number to be seen are crossing it out. So really simple way to let people know who are in peril, let them know that they're not alone, that they don't have to fight this while they're alone. And also there's an opportunity to reach out when it feels right. It's all about eyes and ears in the community. And what you said, the training, the stickers, it allows our industry to present itself as a viable, effective solution to addressing a problem that we really need to eradicate. So can you talk a little bit about anybody who's listening, whether they're a retailer or they're a supplier, how do they get engaged?
Yeah, just going to our website at inourbackyard.org, you'll see freedom stickers all over the place that were just find it and click it. You might see some news about convenience stores who have joined the fight alongside with us. So we really want to get to know you. Just let us know how many store sites do you have, if it's multiple, and what's the best way we can get them to you. We have volunteers who post those out. It's volunteer ran because we believe that really convenience stores care about the community, and we want to make sure you have what you need at all times. So just seeing different partners and even the mom and pop shops, I would say, I would say it's a lot of wives of owners who are very passionate about this. But at some point within about 6 months, you see both partners in that relationship care. And that's what energizes me. This is a fight where it's not just female gendered who care. Everyone cares about this fight. And it doesn't take much to hear something that you don't want to hear. It reminds me, a story that always comes back to me is I was near a conversation with a trafficker and a pretty young girl he was victimizing. And she was just trying to end the conversation, but she wasn't allowed to end the conversation with him unless she addressed him as "I love you" and "I love you, Daddy." And that type of stuff is what breaks your heart. You might not see violence happening right in front of you to know they're being violently trafficked. It's that small coercion, right? That control that you see. So there's certain languages that cashiers will hear in a store, just between that conversations that they're near, and they're just like, something is off. Together we can all say, we all have a gut check. We all have a feeling inside of us. And when we connect that power with convenience stores and they have that freedom sticker up, we've had people come straight to the cashier and say, "I see that freedom sticker, I need help," and they call 911. So we've seen both sides of the action, to either dial 911 or, they take down that hotline for later resources when they're safe. So really just understanding, it's so simple. Just go to the website, inourbackyard.org, tell us your name, tell us where to send these freedom stickers, and you've joined the fight. It's that simple. And we have, a video to help with any of your hiring, for training, things like that. It's quick. We do Zoom calls now to add training, but most people start with the quick 7-minute video. And then we go from there and figure out, how best can we train your team? How can we help you? And it's great having Zoom nowadays. We can just have everyone on an open conversation and learn more.
You're also not adverse at all to hitting the road and visiting stores, and plenty of examples of you spending time at state association meetings or at retailers, just the personal face-to-face in how do you make an even deeper connection. And also want to suggest for any suppliers that want to be engaged, there's opportunities for you to also be involved and to find ways to share the story. And Cheryl can probably walk you through those. And like any volunteer organization, always looking to see how they can maximize the money they have and the resources they have. And the more resources, the more good work you can do. So thank you for joining us today, Cheryl. And it's really uplifting to spend time with people who care about this issue and go outside of their comfort zones in many cases to try to help people they've never met, and making a small difference and thinking about in everybody's lives, how many people do you impact on a level that you could with outreach like this. It's a real powerful way of saying, I belong as part of this bigger human race, that we can do a lot of good things together. So I really appreciate the work you've done over the last 10 plus years, working with convenience stores, working with other partners in the industry, and looking forward to spending more time locking arms with you and volunteers in doing what we can to solve this problem.
Thanks, Jeff. We're excited to connect with anyone, and we'll see you after the big game.
And once again, inourbackyard.org, Convenience Stores Against Trafficking. Thank you for the work you do, and thank you all for listening to Convenience Matters.
Convenience Matters is brought to you by NACS and produced in partnership with Human Factor. For more information, visit convenience.org.